I just wanted you to know, good evening, good evening, good evening. I am NJ Evans and I am coming to you via the evening drive home. It's been a while since you and I have been in communications. Yeah, I had to take a little hiatus there for a few minutes. I have no idea why things were going the way they did, but they went interestingly, to say the least. And be that as it may, I'm quite sure I'm not the only one on the planet that's been having some very strange events happening all at one time. The reason why I decided to come on this evening was because today's the full moon, the Sunday with the full moon, December the 15th, 2024. And we have been told a lot about this full moon. And be prepared and make sure you do this and make sure you do that. And you want to know something? All of that makes a lot of sense to me. However, I just want you to know, I also selected this particular theme, which is called Into Space, because that's kind of like where I think we are at this time. We're kind of floating, and we don't really know exactly which way we're going, but we're going, and we're going forward. And I'd like to welcome you and thank you for stopping by and being with me this evening. What I wanted to share with you is that I'm not by myself. We are thinking of a pre-launch, which is going to be a webinar, and it's going to focus on dyslexia. The title is called Dyslexia, Today, Tomorrow, and the Future Potential. Now, why did I decide to select that? I decided to select that because, as you know, I've spoken to you about production and those types of things. But dyslexia is crossing the board completely. And a lot of people have different feelings about it. Some are very embarrassed. Some people think that people that are dyslexic are really stupid, don't know anything, didn't go to school, can't learn, blah, 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 blah. They put a lot of negative connotations on them. And I think that's because they don't realize how many people that are successful are dyslexic. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. So my reason for approaching this subject matter is because when I was a child, we didn't have a name for whatever that was. And because I went to private school, I had to know that that was an E, that was a B, that was a P, that was a D, that's a 5. All those kinds of things I had to know because I was dyslexic. But nobody told me I was dyslexic. And I had to maintain an A average, not an average, an A average, because my mother and father insisted. So I had to develop a system for myself in order for me to be able to read and understand what was going on. And I could write complete paragraphs backwards and read them backwards. But like I said before, I'm a baby boomer. We didn't have a title. We didn't have a label for people who could do things like that. If they excelled and could stay at the top of the class or pretty close to the top and didn't daydream, which I was also caught doing a lot of times, if they could do those kinds of things and be promoted regularly on time or even jumped, skipped, nobody paid attention to them. Nobody noticed that they were a little bit different. Nobody noticed that they thought outside the box because really, you wasn't allowed to do that. But as far as school and that type of thing is concerned, especially my experience in the Roman Catholic schools, we'll talk about it another time. That's not for this. But I decided to approach dyslexia because I had an opportunity when I lived in California at one time to be a program director. And I think I was talking to you about this, not even director, or coordinator. And it was dealing with workforce for these women who were 45 and above and bringing them into a non-traditional jobs because they found out that these women could build cars and knew what to do with a motor and an engine and blah, blah, blah. And so the city of Sacramento wanted to hire them. But of course, that there was a male component that didn't want them in the old boys, young boys, middle boys club. But they had to have them because it was now mandated. But what they did was they really hit on their self-esteem. Because your self-esteem can go down if you're not living with a real healthy self-esteem. It can go down really bad. And the thing about it is that if your parents don't know, mine didn't know, They just knew that I had to do what they wanted me to do, and I knew that was the rule, so I did it. But everybody doesn't come from that type of an environment. And a lot of those ladies, as brilliant as they were, without using a book, they were struggling with their self esteem. They were struggling with the idea that they could build this car better than their brothers could. But as far as reading, their reading level when they took the test was third grade, fourth grade, 45 years old. And that was then. Do you know, I saw the same scenario again when I moved into Delaware. And it was the same thing. They wanted to take these full grown women, some who have never had a job in their life, because they couldn't pass the interview. They couldn't fill out the application. They weren't ignorant. People weren't taking the time to share with them what it is that needs to be done. And it also depends on what walk of life you're in. Okay. So what I decided to do was, let's address this. Let's address the fact that there are people who are dyslexic who are endowed. They have money. They've done successful things. And there are those who did not do successful things. And I think it depends on your experience, your background, the family unit that you come from, who else is involved in the nurturing of you as a child. So here we are. I wanted to talk about that stigma. And this is part of what's going to happen in the pre-webinar, that pre-launch I was talking about a few minutes ago. At least I have it on my banner. I really want you to come if you're available that day. And I'll let you know exactly everything, because I'll have an email address for you to send me your information so I can send you my information, and we can go on from there, and also give you the links to where they're going to be on what social media platforms. But what I wanted to do was cover the stigma. I want to cover the policy. They have a new policy that's going to be in place. Oh, no, as a matter of fact, it is in place. They're calling dyslexics disabled now. But they are trying to say, well, some people are trying to move it into a mental thing. It's not a mental thing. It's a learning disability. Trust me, it's a learning disability, not a mental thing. But there are those that feel that, well, we could help you better if we medicate you, of course, because then that person is not going to be thinking anymore. They're going to be on automatic pilot. That's not going to work, though. But anyhow, that's other discussions that we will have. And we'll have different people who are in the industry who can talk a little bit about that on a different kind of level and see where we're going. But one of the reasons why I brought this to your attention is because the banks, that's the finance industry, right? The banks were looking for people who were dyslexic. Now, I think that's a wonderful idea. Now, what is their reason for wanting to do that? Well, because these individuals who are dyslexic usually, generally think outside the box. And that's what they need to solve a lot of their issues. Somebody who can think outside the box. So it's very successful like that. But are they going to give you equal pay? Are they going to treat you as fairly and give you the same rights as the worker sitting next to you who's considered normal, whatever that means? All right? Who doesn't have the dyslexia as a challenge? Are they going to have an atmosphere, a cultural atmosphere where people are communicating and there's no unnecessary idiosyncrasies and stigmas that are floating through the air and things that you can feel and see and understand, and then there are things that you wish you never knew about? Are they going to be really warm to these people who are a little bit different than they are? It depends, right? And it also depends on what kind of person you are as a person who is dyslexic. Do you have a chip on your shoulder? So before I close this, I want to say this. There are a few people who've been very successful who are dyslexic. One of them that I really like, only because he owns an airline. And not only that, I like the way he maneuvered the purchasing of the airline, and you should really listen to his story. His name is Sir Richard Branson. And I really like that, his story, because the gentleman, I should say, is dyslexic. And then you have Steve Jobs and Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg. And you have Keanu Reeves and Cher and Johnny Depp and, Muhammad Ali and Whoopi Goldberg and Magic Johnson. And you have so many other people that there's a long list. There's some senators whose names that is escaping me at the moment, female senators who are dyslexic. And I'm saying, wow, look at this. But who tells you about that? Most of the time, people hide that type of stuff. And sometimes they don't have to. As I said to you before, I had to learn a system. And when I learned the system, I used the system. And I kept excelling in the different areas that I was coming through. But that doesn't mean that I didn't make those errors where I would see a word and couldn't tell what the word was because I was calling the letter incorrectly. I was naming it incorrectly. But over the years, I've managed to acquire 12,000. I think it's 12,000, I want to say 183 hours of electronics certified. Okay. I could back that up. And there's some other things that I've also qualified high like that. There was a once upon a time when LinkedIn first came in, I had 183,000 people following me. And it was primarily me doing podcasts. What we call podcasts today, I called interview then because I was media. That's what I did. I interviewed people. So I'm saying that to you to say that I'm not talking about a subject matter I don't know. I actually lived it. And it was quite interesting. And yes, you have to have some self-esteem there. And yes, you have to know who you are, and you have to know your wealth, your worth. I said wealth, and that is true. But you have to know your worth, your value. You can't let somebody else tell you who you are and what you're worth. Can't do that. You have to know it. So in closing, I'm saying I love it if you join me and some people, like I said before, that I'm going to be inviting. It's going to be this month before we really hot tail out of here and go into 2025. And I wish you would join me and share some of your thoughts, some of the things that you've experienced. If you're dyslexic or if there's anyone in your family who is dyslexic. What kind of things did you go through? What kind of things do you like? And where do you think society is heading? And do you feel that people should get equal pay because they're dyslexic? My name is NJ Evans, and I look forward to hearing from you, seeing you, talking with you in the near future. And this is the Evening Drive Home. Oh yes, before I forget, remember to create the reality that you truly do desire. Watch what you focus on. Watch what you think about and watch the words that you use. So you can accomplish in 2025 everything that you set out to do in 24. Might have developed a little cold feet underneath you. Well, go for it now, because I believe in you. And there's so many more that do as well. Until next time, ciao.